And that evolution, my friends, is what we call training the mind, not torturing the mind, not forcing the mind, not white knuckling your way through your own existence. Training, the way you would train a body, the way you would train a dog, with consistency, with patience, with love, and with the absolute unwavering belief that change is possible. Let me tell you about another person. Her name is Amara, and she grew up in Lagos, Nigeria, in a two-room apartment with 6 other people. Her father left when she was 4. Not dramatically, not with a scene. He just didn't come home one day. And her mother, a remarkable woman, a warrior of a woman, worked 3 jobs to keep the family alive. Amara grew up watching her mother be strong, watching her mother never break, watching her mother carry the weight of the world and never once show that it was heavy. And Amara learned something from that. Something beautiful and something dangerous at the same time. She learned that strength meant silence. She learned that love looked like endurance. She learned that peace was something you performed, not something you felt. She moved to London when she was 23, got a degree, built a career, built a life. And from the outside, she was the rock everyone else leaned on. Her friends called her when they were falling apart. Her colleagues came to her when problems arose. Her family sent her their burdens across the ocean, and she carried every single one. And one morning she woke up and she couldn't get out of bed. Not because she was physically sick, but because something in her had finally, quietly, completely run out of whatever it had been running on. She lay there staring at the ceiling and she thought, I have spent my entire life being strong for everyone else. And I have never once asked if someone could be strong for me. She called in sick that day, and she lay in bed, and she cried for 6 hours straight. And when it was over, she said something happened. She said it felt like a storm had come and cleaned out a room that had been closed for decades. She said she felt lighter than she had in years. Not fixed, not healed, but lighter. Like something had been allowed to move through her for the first time instead of being forced to stay buried. That was the beginning of Amara's journey to the rock. And this is the first thing I want you to understand about training your mind to be peaceful like a rock. Rocks are not dry. Rocks are not empty. Rocks are not cold. A rock that has been sitting by the ocean is wet and alive and covered with life. It has been touched by everything. It has not avoided the water. It has simply not been swept away by it. Real peace is not the absence of feeling. Real peace is the capacity to feel without being destroyed. Real peace is the ability to let the wave hit you, to feel the full force of it, and to still be standing when the water recedes. This is not numbness. This is not detachment. This is not building higher walls. This is building deeper roots. And how do you build deeper roots? I'm glad you're still here, because we're about to get into it. The very first thing, the thing that every great tradition of wisdom on this planet agrees on, is this. You have to learn to witness yourself, not judge yourself, witness yourself. There is a difference so vast between those two things that it might as well be the difference between standing in the sunlight and standing at the bottom of the ocean. Judgment says, I feel anxious. That means something is wrong with me. That means I am weak. That means I need to fix this immediately or push it away or explain it or justify it. Witnessing says, I feel anxious. Interesting. What is this? Where do I feel it in my body? What does it want? What is it trying to tell me? Judgment creates resistance. And resistance, my friends, is the enemy of peace. Because what you resist, as Carl Jung knew, what you resist not only persists but grows. You push something down and it doesn't go away. It goes deeper. It takes root in a darker part of you. And from there it grows sideways, spreading into parts of your life you didn't expect, showing up as anger when you meant to feel nothing, showing up as tears when you thought you were fine, showing up as a low, constant hum of unease that you can't quite name. But when you witness, when you simply notice without immediately reacting, something extraordinary happens. The feeling is allowed to complete its arc. Like a wave, it rises, it crests, and it falls on its own without you having to fight it. I want to give you a practice, not a concept, a practice on something real that you can do starting today. The next time you feel something difficult, something uncomfortable, something that normally triggers your need to react or run or numb, I want you to stop for just 5 seconds. Just 5. And I want you to say to yourself out loud or inside your mind, I notice I'm feeling. That's it. That's the whole practice. I notice I'm feeling anxious. I notice I'm feeling angry. I notice I'm feeling like I want to disappear. I notice I'm feeling overwhelmed. You might think this sounds too simple to be useful, but I promise you, the moment you insert the word notice between yourself and your feeling, you create a space, a tiny, precious, revolutionary space. And in that space lives the most important thing a human being can ever develop: choice. Because right now, for so many of us, there is no space between the stimulus and the response. Someone says something, and we are already gone, already reacting, already spiraling. Something happens, and we are immediately in the story we have told ourselves about what it means, about what always happens to us, about how the world is against us, about how we never get what we want, about how other people have it easier, about how we don't deserve good things, about how it will always be this way. We are not responding to what is happening. We are responding to our story about what is happening, and our story was written by a frightened child. I want to tell you about the day I understood this. Not read it in a book, not heard it in a lecture, but actually felt it in my body, in a way that permanently rewired something. I was driving. Someone cut me off on the highway, and I lost it. I genuinely lost it. My face went red. My hands went tight on the wheel. I was yelling inside my car at a person who could not hear me on behalf of an incident that had lasted approximately 2 seconds and endangered no one. And in the middle of my rage, something made me pause. Maybe it was exhaustion. Maybe it was grace. Maybe it was just the random mercy of a quiet moment. But I paused and I heard myself. I heard what I was saying. And it wasn't about the other driver. It was about my father, who never made me feel like I was worth his time. It was about every boss who had overlooked me. It was about every moment when someone had acted like my presence, my space, my existence was an inconvenience. That car cutting me off was a match, but the fuel had been accumulating for 37 years. And that was the moment I understood that my reactions were almost never about what I thought they were about. This is true for you too. I know it is. The thing that made you snap at your partner last Tuesday was probably not really about the dishes. The thing that made you lie awake at 3 in the morning last week was probably not really about the presentation. The thing that makes you feel like you can't breathe sometimes is probably not really about the traffic or the bill or the comment someone made on the internet. We are carrying ancient wounds, friends. We are walking through our present lives with our arms full of old pain. And every new challenge, every new difficulty, every wave that comes crashing toward us hits us not just with its own force, but with the accumulated weight of everything we are still holding. And the rock, the quiet, unshakable, peaceful rock, it doesn't carry extra weight. It carries only what is true. It sits in exactly the conditions that are real, right now in this moment, and it meets those conditions as they are. This is called being present, and I know, you have heard that word 1,000 times. Presence, mindfulness, be here now. It has almost become a cliche. It has almost lost its meaning because it has been printed on coffee mugs and embroidered on throw pillows and turned into a lifestyle brand. But underneath all of that, underneath the commodification and the marketing, there is a truth so ancient and so powerful that every wisdom tradition in human history has pointed toward it. Whether you are Buddhist or Christian, whether you are a Stoic philosopher or a Sufi poet, whether you are a scientist who studies neuroplasticity or a grandmother who just knows things without being able to explain why, every single tradition, every single lineage points to the same thing. The present moment is the only place peace exists, not in the past. The past is gone, and when you live there, you are living in a story. You are living in your interpretation of something that no longer exists in material form. The past cannot hurt you now. Only your memory of the past, held up against your present experience, creates pain. Not in the future. The future is imagined, and when you live there, you are living in a projection. You are living in your fear of something that may never happen, or you're craving for something that may never arrive. Why? The future cannot help you now. Only your presence in this moment, your willingness to meet what is actually here, creates possibility. Everything. Peace, love, creativity, connection, joy, meaning, purpose. Everything real lies only here, in the breath you are taking right now. In the weight of your body in the seat you are sitting in the sound of my voice reaching your ears right now, in this moment, which will never happen again. The rock knows this. The rock exists only in its present moment. It doesn't worry about the wave that hit it yesterday. It doesn't dread the wave that might come tomorrow. It just sits fully and completely in the now. And I am asking you, starting today, to practice sitting with yourself in the now. Not fixing, not planning, not analyzing, not scrolling, not numbing, just sitting. 5 minutes a day. That's all. Find a quiet place. Sit down. Feel your feet on the floor, your back against the chair, your breath moving in and out of your body. And every time your mind runs to the past or the future, which it will do, because that is what minds do, you simply notice it. There goes my mind thinking about the meeting. There goes my mind worrying about money. And you gently, with all the kindness you would show to a frightened child, bring it back to the breath, back to the body, back to here. This is not a spiritual exercise. Well, it is, but it doesn't have to be religious. This is neurological training. Every time you notice your mind wandering and bring it back, you are literally, physically, measurably strengthening the prefrontal cortex, the part of your brain responsible for regulation, for perspective, for the ability to pause between stimulus and response. You are literally building the architecture of peace inside your own skull. You are becoming the rock. And now I want to talk about something that nobody wants to talk about. Something that gets in the way of this more than almost anything else. Something that we have been told our whole lives is a virtue. Something we have been praised for. Something we have built our identities around. Control. We are obsessed with control. We want to control outcomes. We want to control other people's perceptions of us. We want to control how our lives unfold. We want to control whether the person we love stays or goes. We want to control whether the business succeeds or fails. We want to control whether we get the thing we want on the timeline we have decided is acceptable. And when we cannot control, and we almost never truly can, we suffer. We suffer enormously. We grip and we grasp and we manipulate and we plan and we strategize and we worry and we overthink, all in the service of trying to force the river to flow in the direction we have decided it should flow. And the river, as rivers do, flows where it flows, where it flows. The Stoic philosophers had a concept they called the dichotomy of control. Epictetus, who was a slave, let me say that again, a man who was literally, legally owned by another human being who had almost no material freedom whatsoever. Epictetus taught that the path to freedom was understanding this simple distinction. Some things are in your control, and some things are not. What is in your control? Your thoughts, your intentions, your efforts, your responses, your choices about how to interpret what happens to you, your commitment to your values, your willingness to show up. What is not in your control? Everything else. The weather, other people's choices, the economy, whether the person falls in love with you, whether the algorithm rewards your content, whether the diagnosis comes back clean, whether the plane lands on time, whether the world sees what you are worth. And here is the radical, life-changing, peace-producing practice that Epictetus prescribed from his position of literal slavery, in chains with no external freedom whatsoever. Let go of everything that is not in your control, not because it doesn't matter, but because your clinging to it does not help it and only destroys you. This does not mean don't care. This does not mean don't try. This does not mean be passive and let life happen to you. The rock does not sit in the ocean by giving up. The rock sits in the ocean with complete commitment to being what it is, being where it is, while releasing any claim on what the water will do. You try your absolute hardest. You give everything you have. You care with your whole heart. And then you release the outcome. You release the timeline. You release the need for it to look exactly the way you pictured it. Because here's what I have found in my own life, in the lives of every resilient, peaceful, deeply rooted person I have ever met. When you release control of the outcome, you don't stop caring. You actually start doing better work. Cool. You actually become more creative, more flexible, more present, more genuinely connected to what you're doing. Because you're no longer performing. You're no longer white-knuckling your way through life, hoping nobody notices how scared you are. You're just doing it. Freely, fully. From a place of deep, grounded peace, let me tell you about Marcus. Marcus was an athlete. Not a famous athlete, not a professional athlete, but a deeply committed one. He had trained for 10 years for a particular race. 10 years. And he was good. He was genuinely, remarkably good. And on the day of the race, he fell. Not because of something he did wrong. Not because of a mistake or a lapse in focus. The person ahead of him fell, and Marcus, running at full speed, could not avoid them. He went down hard on the track. He finished the race, but far behind where his time would have placed him. The medal he had been training for 10 years to win went to someone else. And I asked Marcus years later, after he had become one of the most peaceful, grounded people I know, what had been the hardest part of that day. He said it wasn't the fall. It wasn't even missing the medal. He said the hardest part was the voice in his head that spent years afterward trying to convince him that it had been his fault. That if he'd been better, faster, more aware, he could have avoided it. He said he spent 3 years trying to control retroactively something that had already happened, trying to rewrite an event that was finished, exhausting himself with a war against reality. And then one day he stopped. He just stopped. He said he looked at his hands, his runner's hands, calloused and capable, and he thought, these hands trained for 10 years. These hands showed up every single day. These hands did everything they were capable of. And on that day, on that specific moment of that specific day, something happened that was outside the power of these hands to prevent. That's all. That's the whole story. Something happened that was outside my control. And he said he felt something release in his chest that he hadn't even known was being held. And then he started training again. Not to win back something he had lost. Not to prove anything to anyone. But because running was what he loved. Running was what he was. Running was what he was. Running was where he felt most himself. And 2 years later, he ran the best race of his life. Not because he tried harder. Because he tried freer. That is the rock, friends. That is the rock in its truest form. Weathered by what has come. Shaped by it even. But not defined by it. Not stopped by it. Now I want to go somewhere deeper. I want to talk about something that is at the heart of almost every crisis of peace that I have ever witnessed in a human life. Identity. Who do you think you are? Not your resume, not your role, not your relationship status, or your job title, or your bank account, or your follow account. Not the story your family tells about you, or the reputation you have carefully constructed over years. Not the version of yourself you perform for the world. Who are you underneath all of that? Because here is the problem with building your peace on those things. All of those things can be taken away. The job can be lost. The relationship can end. The money can disappear. The reputation can be damaged. The body can get sick. The plan can fall apart. And if your sense of self, your sense of worth, your sense of okayness is built on any of those things, then every wave that threatens those things is a wave that threatens you. And you will never have peace. You will only have the temporary, brittle, constantly threatened peace of someone whose foundation is made of sand. The rock's foundation is not made of sand. So what is it made of? Here is what I believe. Here is what I have come to know through pain and silence and searching and listening. The foundation of genuine, unshakable peace is the knowledge, not the intellectual belief, the deep bodily knowledge that you have inherent value that cannot be earned or lost. You are not valuable because of what you produce. You are not worthy because of what you achieve. You are not okay only when things are going well. You are a living, breathing, conscious human being, and that alone is enough. I know that sounds like a Hallmark card. I know. But I need you to sit with what it would mean if it were true. Not just sound true, actually be true. What would you do differently if you knew that your worth was not on the line with every risk you took? What would you try if you knew that failure didn't reduce you? How would you love if you knew that rejection didn't define you? How would you live if you knew that no wave, no matter how large, could wash away what is most essentially you? You would be free. And that freedom, that rootedness in an identity that cannot be shaken by circumstance, is what I mean when I say peace like a rock. Not peace because nothing bad is happening. Peace because I know who I am in the middle of the bad things happening. Peace because my foundation is laid so deep that the storm, even a terrible storm, only touches my surface. I think about people who have demonstrated this. She couldn't access the formidable intelligence that had always saved her because that intelligence had never been trained to deal with feelings, only with facts. She ended up in therapy. She ended up in a support group. She ended up on a Saturday morning in November, sitting in a circle of people sharing things that she had spent her entire life believing were weaknesses. And she heard a man, a big man, A man who looked like he could bench press a refrigerator. Talk about the moment he realized he had never allowed himself to cry about his father's death. And something cracked open in Sarah. She said she went home that afternoon and she sat in her kitchen and she thought about every moment she had not let herself feel. Every loss she had catalogued and filed away. Every grief she had folded up and put in a drawer. And she just opened the drawer. It took weeks. It took months. It was not a single movie moment. It was a long, patient, sometimes messy, sometimes surprising process of feeling things that had been waiting for years. And on the other side of that process, she called it the first real peace she had ever known. Not peace because everything was fine. Her marriage was still over. Still over. Her daughter was still estranged. Her career was still disrupted. The external circumstances had not changed, but she had changed. She had changed at the root. She said, and I will never forget this, she said, I feel like I finally unpacked my suitcase. I'd been living out of a suitcase my whole life, and I didn't even know it. I just thought that's what life felt like. And now I've unpacked it, and I'm actually here, in my own life, for the first time. That is peace, not the peace of the perfect life, the peace of the fully lived one. And now I want to talk about something that is woven through everything I've said so far. Something that is both the obstacle and the key. Something that we are constantly negotiating with whether we know it or not. Other people. Oh, other people. Oh, other people. Oh, other people. How much of your peace have you outsourced to other people? How much of your okayness depends on whether they approve of you, whether they validate you, whether they stay, whether they see you, whether they come through? How often do you feel fine until you talk to a certain person, and then you feel terrible? How often do you feel terrible until someone says something kind and then you feel fine? We are social creatures, deeply, biologically, undeniably social. We need each other. We are wired for connection. Loneliness is genuinely painful, not metaphorically, but neurologically. When we are socially excluded, the same parts of the brain activate as when we are physically injured. This is not weakness, this is human design. But, and this is a significant but, there is a difference between needing connection and needing specific people to behave in specific ways in order for you to be okay. The first is a healthy, beautiful, essential part of being human. The second is a trap, because other people are not in your control. Other people are going to be who they are, make the choices they make, grow at the pace they grow, and sometimes, often that is going to hurt you. Not because they are trying to hurt you, not always. Sometimes simply because two people who both have their own unprocessed wounds and their own fears and their own stories are going to bump up against each other in ways that create friction. And if your peace requires them not to do that, you are going to spend your entire life